After another confusing loss, fan questions are getting a little bit louder. They're getting a little bit more pointed. And it's pretty clear that this Washington Commanders team is nearing a crossroads. That and more coming up right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's Locked On Commanders. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, here with you 5 days a week. And you can also find me writing about the Commanders on Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. You can follow me on X at DHarrison82. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or review. And a special thank you goes out to all of the everydayers, those of you who make every episode part of your viewing or listening routine. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to discuss how the offense's perceived limitations are actually a little bit by design, how this team is wildly inconsistent, but the path to the playoffs is clearer than you think. But first, the defense is struggling, but the data shows that the blame may not be going to the right places. All that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. It's Mailbag Wednesday. We're going to have to skip over a little bit of AAR Tuesday because of the Monday night game. I'm going to be quite honest with you. Wasn't really looking forward to deep dive in that game again anyway. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of you probably weren't looking forward to deep dive in that game again either. So let's get to the mailbag. Let's answer some fan questions. Commanders, Locked On Commanders insiders came through the mailbag pretty heavy. Not going to be able to get to all of them, but I did answer those that we're not going to be able to get into the episode. I answered to the insiders directly. Of course, if you want that answer publicly in a future episode, feel free to go ahead and drop those questions again anytime we do this. But let's dive right into one of the biggest issues facing this team, obviously, and that is defensive inconsistency. And what every fan is worried about, it would seem, is what's going on with the defense. Insiders Seth, Michael, Bill, Merle, and Ravi all came through with a part of what we're going to do in this collective answer, basically asking what's wrong with the bend don't break defense. Is Marshon Lattimore a bust? How are teams attacking Bobby Wagner? And what are the options to fix it? Like maybe playing some younger players or new additions like Drake Jackson. So Seth came through and asked about the bend don't break philosophy and whether or not this Commanders defense was kind of on the verge of breaking, because teams have figured out that attacking the flats, attacking the edges of the defense is the strong suit. And I would go out on a limb and say they didn't necessarily figure it out. I think more teams are just trying to take advantage of it as we get into the season. Because if you remember last year, honestly, the edges were part of the problem then as well. You know, Dorrance Armstrong Jr. was getting a lot of pressures, a lot of penetration into the backfield, but not getting a lot of sacks, not getting a lot of TFLs. This year, he's definitely doing better at that, but there's still moments certainly where Dorrance isn't setting the edge, containing run plays and quarterback scrambles and all that kind of stuff as effectively as you'd like him to. They brought in Dietrich Wise this offseason from the New England Patriots to be part of that solution, and I think that he was doing pretty well all the way up until he got hurt in week 2. And, that's unfortunate. Javonte Jean-Baptiste came in, was doing an admirable job for a second-year, 7th-round draft pick. But then he got hurt. And I just think that at the end of the day, like it's just becoming one of those things where the Washington Commanders are having a harder and harder time setting the edge, containing runs, containing outside runs, forcing them back inside, doing all those things, and containing some of these more mobile type of quarterbacks. And it's a problem that they're going to have to try to fix some way, somehow with the guys that they have. Drake Jackson. So there's a little bit of news that came out on Tuesday. The Washington Commanders did sign Drake Jackson, defensive lineman, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, to the active roster. He's a former 2nd-round draft pick of the 49ers. Certainly has had a good amount of talent, but he's also had a good amount of injuries. I could go back and watch his previous tape before the injuries and kind of look at it and say, well, this is what he can do. This is what he can do. But quite honest with you, we don't know what Drake Jackson is going to be because of the injuries, because of the recovery. He was released by the 49ers with a failed physical designation, had to work his way healthy, work his way back to football shape, at least to be able to pass a physical. Worked out with the Washington Commanders. Clearly, he passed that physical, and now he's going to be part of the team. But what should you expect from him? Honestly, until you see him out there on the field, I wouldn't expect anything. I think expectation can get people in trouble. And that's going to lead us right to the next part of this question, which is Michael's question about Marshon Lattimore. Are we ready to call him a bust? Listen, some of the people out here, fans, some media, I'm sure, I don't know, I don't listen and read everything that, my fellow beat reporters put out, but I'm sure there are media members who have already called Marshon Lattimore a bust. I know there are some people who called Marshon Lattimore a bust last year. There are listeners to Locked On Commanders who called Marshon Lattimore a bust last year, even though I said specifically on this program, don't expect anything from Marshon Lattimore in his first year. Hope to get whatever you want, but expectations should be held until the second year. Yet, here we are. And I've always said agreeing is not a prerequisite to listen to the program. But the frustration for fans, understandable about this defense, the Jekyll and Hyde mentality of it, the ups and downs, and the, will they, won't they? And I know, again, we talked about this coming out of the game against the Los Angeles Chargers, because a lot of people were saying, okay, boom, there's the defense you need that entire, last 2.5 quarters of the game and all this stuff. And okay, now they got to figure it out. And I kind of, I didn't want to pour water on the fire, but I was kind of like, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit. We don't know if they figured it out. We just know that at least for 2.5 quarters, they figured it out against the Los Angeles Chargers. And then we come out here and, not all on the defense clearly against the Chicago Bears, but certainly the defense not necessarily standing up in some moments where they could have. But he had that, Marshon specifically had a very disastrous performance in week 2 against Green Bay Packers. But the reality is, since then, he's been very solid and probably one of the more consistent players on defense. He's gotten consecutive Bs from me in the gradings. He's gone from a somewhat of a liability, at least early on in the season, of course, a very solid, reliable. He's a veteran presence, tight coverage guy. Honestly, if you go back and watch the film, Caleb Williams doesn't even really look his way trying to find targets in the passing game. So clearly that respect factor is still there. And I think that a lot of the criticism is based on some old news, is based on some cherry-picked highlights. And honestly, from an individual standpoint, his arrow is pointing up as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure Joey Jr. will probably get asked about him on Thursday because it seems like a weekly exercise where he does. But again, you go back and watch that Bears game. I mean, the worst play he had was that 55-yard touchdown play by DeAndre Swift. Wow. Bears running back. Quan Martin is going to make the tackle on the sideline. Marshon pulls up and basically just assumes that Quan's going to get him out of bounds or get him down. Yeah, you need Marshon to continue running on that. Like, finish the play, dude. Play with the whistle. You know this. You're a veteran. All that stuff. That's a terrible play. But let's not forget that's not his guy. Let's not forget that that's not his coverage. It's fine to get mad at Marshon for not running through the whistle on that play. But what's kind of just ironic to me is that the person who actually blew the coverage, blew the tackle, is not getting near as much criticism for that play as the guy who, yes, was in a position to help save the play, but was not the initial man responsible for the play in the first place. And I'm not telling you that you should go out there and say, well, Quan Martin should get benched or cut or is a bust or anything like that either. I'm just saying, when you look at the body of work, Marshon Lattimore had a very good day against Chicago Bears overall. Bobby Wagner is the next one. Bill's question about Bobby Wagner, and this is a little bit of a repeated question, over the weeks. And I think every time the defense struggles, we're probably going to get some sort of question about this. Should Bobby Wagner come out on passing plays? I'll just tell you this, offenses trying to isolate running backs and tight ends, receiving tight ends, especially wide receivers on linebackers, is nothing new. It's not a 2025 creation. It's not a Bobby Wagner tactic. It's something that every offense wants to do every single week against every single opponent, because even your best linebackers in the world. I was at a restaurant with my wife on Sunday, and they had the Buccaneers 49ers game on. So I was, of course, keeping an eye on it because, it's what I do. I love football. And the Buccaneers are trying to get receivers and receiving tight ends and running backs on Fred Warner, who is arguably the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL. Now he's injured, unfortunately, so that is what it is. But again, this is a very common tactic. This isn't new. This isn't just specific to Bobby Wagner. But even in his worst game back in week 2 against the Green Bay Packers, he was still better and more consistent than most of the guys on the field. You take him off the field, and you take the literal heart and soul of the defense, also the brain of the defense. Remember, this is a guy that on occasion, when the offenses move fast, he makes the play call without Joe Witt Jr. Like, that's how instrumental Bobby Wagner is for this team. Right now, his overall season grade for me is an A-. He's a tackling machine. He's got 65 tackles already through 6 weeks. That's ridiculous. You're taking that leadership, that production off the field, the schematic. Like, you don't bench a guy like that, guys. You just don't do it. And honestly, when you look at the stats and you look at everything else, like Jordan McGee, when he is on the field, he's got a blown tackle rate of over 28%. It's terrible. And again, and I'm out here like down talking Jordan McGee almost. I have a lot of hope for what Jordan McGee's potential is, but his potential. And don't confuse his potential for what Bobby Wagner brings on the field, not just as a player, but as a brain, as the heart and soul and driver of that defense. Merle also asked a question about Drake Jackson. Again, we're going to have to kind of see what Drake really brings. And while fixing the defense is certainly priority number one for everyone, there is a bigger, more existential question looming over the entire Commanders organization right now. We'll get into that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you in part by FanDuel. The NFL season is rolling forward, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss, and you've had 6 weeks now to get in on it. The offer still stands right now. New customers, you bet just $5 when you sign up at FanDuel, and if that $5 bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. We just spent the first segment of today's episode breaking down all the defensive struggles, what needs to change, what maybe doesn't need to change, where the blame needs to go. And if you think that's what's going to happen next to someone's getting switched out, FanDuel is the perfect place to put that analysis to the test. I love that you can bet on just about everything. Think the pass rush is going to get a big sack total against the Dallas Cowboys this weekend. There's a prop for that. Think that a specific player is due for a big game. You can bet on that as well. It adds a whole new layer of excitement to watching any game, including non-Commanders games that maybe you don't have as much passion about. I love my same game parlays, everydayers. You already know that, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. After several up and down weeks for the Washington Commanders, it is fair to start asking the toughest question of all: what or who is this football team? Dr. Wonderful, and Jay, two insiders, came in, asked combined type of question. Who is this team really? What do they need to do to find consistency? And is winning the division their best path to the playoffs? So I'll give you a little bit of an answer right up front. Winning the division is always the best path to the playoffs. However, I get the point of the question is that basically the only way that they're going to get there? We'll talk about that here coming up. Dr. Wonderful, the question that you asked about this team split personality, that really is the question, right? Like at the end of the day, that's the question that needs to get answered before anything else, because getting that question answered is what's going to make this thing go. Are you really this bad team that we see every once in a while show up? Or are you really this good team that we see every once in a while show up? And I would say that they're really this good team. The key is hitting that stride, hitting that notes, if you want to use a musical analogy, consistently. Because if you were actually the bad team, if the bad team was the true you, then you're going to get consistently there as a bad team much faster. Because if you're that bad of a team, these other teams are going to take advantage of it, and they're just going to exploit what you don't do well, and they're just going to run all over you, kind of like people are with the New York Jets right now. So who is this team? From my perspective, it's a run-first offense. It's a physical offense that needs to establish that physicality and not get overly pass-happy. At one point in time during the game against the Chicago Bears, and I understand you entered the second half trailing, but one-score game, no need to panic, no need to hit the all-out button. But at one point in time in the second half, there was a 2-to-1 pass-to-run ratio of play calling. Now, I understand that the final play that ultimately led to the Chicago Bears getting the ball back was a design run play. It was supposed to be a handoff, all those things, and it was a fumble. So it's like, well, how can you call for more runs when Ja'Cory Crossing-Merritt has a fumble he loses, Jaden Daniels has a fumble that he loses, Jaden Daniels had a second fumble that he was able to recover while he's running. I got it. Sloppy play is always going to deter any type of strategy, any type of gameplay, right? But I think the bottom line is through 6 weeks, honestly, through 4 weeks, we saw it into the 5th week and into the last week. We're going to continue to see it. This team is best offensively when it is setting the tone as an established physical rushing attack. Ja'Cory Crossing-Merritt, I thought he got a good amount of carries, 17 carries total for the game. I think that was a good number to kind of hit. Jeremy McNichols got in there with a handful of carries. I'd love to see Chris Rodriguez get in there. Look, Ja'Cory Crossing-Merritt's got to get 14 carries. Jeremy McNichols gets 6. Chris Rodriguez gets 6. Like, whatever it is, Chris Rodriguez is honestly, to me, is that tone setter. Chris Rodriguez is the guy that's going to run between the guards, run between the tackles, ram into the offensive line, or ram into the defensive lineman, really punish him. And then Ja'Cory Crossing-Merritt come in, take advantage of a winded, bruised, beat up defensive front. Now, not criticizing Kliff for this necessarily. Chris Rodriguez did have a calf injury coming into the game. Don't know how serious it was, all those things. But that's just kind of the ideal pattern for me, is instead of putting the ball in your 7th round rookie's hands 17 times, and completely understand that final fumble was not Bill's fault anyway, but to put that much on your 7th round rookie running back, any rookie running back, to be quite honest with you, it's just a lot. And when you have a guy in Chris Rodriguez who's proven capable, when you have a guy in Jeremy McNichols who's proven capable, use them. They use J-Mac. They use Jeremy McNichols. Use a little bit more of C-Rod. Set the tone. Get that establishment right up front. I was actually having this conversation with a fellow media member on Tuesday. I thought it was really interesting. Perhaps, maybe, instead of deferring after winning the coin toss, put your defense on the field first. We've all seen it. The better unit on this team is the offense. Out of the offense and defense, the offense is the better unit. Put the offense on the field first. You win the toss, receive the ball, put Jaden, put those running backs on the field, set the tone early, establish the tone early, come out physical, let them do it. Like, I don't think it's a bad idea. I love the strategy of, getting the ball to start the second half and all those things. I really do. But if you come out and you set the tone physically from the jump, it can basically wipe out and negate the fact that you're not getting the ball to start the second half. I think it's an interesting idea. Wouldn't mind seeing them try it. On defense, right now, their identity is inconsistency. That's the identity, right? Like, some games we see they get gashed. Some games we see they play really tight. Some days we see Marshon Lattimore get an F. Some days we see Marshon Lattimore get a B. Fortunately, it's been more Bs than Fs. Trey Amos, I think, has actually been the most one of the most consistent players on the defense. Mikey Sainristil is clearly being targeted by teams, especially in critical moments. Caleb Williams went after him like 4 pass attempts in a row on Monday night alone. The up and down play is frustrating. The pass rush is the same thing. One game this team gets 5 sacks. Next team they get maybe 1 or even none. So I think to find that consistency, for me, the path is pretty clear. Offensively, commit to the run game. Set the tone. Use it to set up the pass. And please stop with the quarterback design runs. Jaden Daniels is scrambling on pass plays more than any other quarterback in the National Football League. He's going to get his runs in. He's going to get his carries in. I think the designed run plays actually are probably some of the worst production opportunities that Jaden Daniels gets, especially the horizontal runs, the runs that are parallel to the line of scrimmage. Get north and south, man. The fastest way to get from A to B is a straight line. Again, be physical. Just run north and south, hammer the line of scrimmage, let Jaden Daniels do his damage as a weapon himself during pass plays in those secondary plays. Defensively, they just got to get off the field, man. You got to get better at tackling. You have to eliminate those communication breakdowns. It's going to take reps. It's going to take work. It's going to take effort. And it's going to take checking egos. If someone tells you, if you're the cornerback and the safety says, hey, shift to this, bro, just shift to it. Don't argue about it. Don't say, no, I know better. Just shift to it. So here's the reality about the playoff scenario. Right now, the Washington Commanders, number 12 in the NFC playoff picture, but they're only 1 game out of the number 7 slot. And I went ahead and projected the next 5 weeks. I'm not going to go through every single pick here. But basically, I gave the Commanders a 3-2 record over the next 5 weeks, which is obviously not great, but above 500 means you enter the bye week above 500. If it goes the way that I see it, which again, not very likely, but if it does, I've got Washington entering the last 6 games of the season after the bye as the number 9 seed in the NFC, 1 game out of the final wild card spot, 1 game out of the division lead. Everything is still there for them. There's no need, honestly, to get too deep into the whole playoff atmosphere and everything else like that, and whether or not the best path is doing anything. Just stack wins, man. Just go out there, go 1-0 against the Dallas Cowboys, then worry about trying to go 1-0 against Kansas City Chiefs. That's it. Win week to week, and the playoff picture is going to take care of itself in due time. So while the team searches for that big picture identity, there's some very specific schematic questions on offense that fans are starting to bring up, and we're going to try to answer them best we can. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your favorite event, whether it be a game, a comedy special, a concert, whatever. Game Time is the fast and easy way for you to buy tickets for all of it, anything that's near you, whether you're traveling or you're at home, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. Game Time is the only ticket app that you're ever going to need. We just talked about this team's path forward and the importance of these upcoming games. There's nothing like being there in person and trying to witness them form that identity. I love using Game Time because you can find amazing deals even on game day, which I've done several times in the past. If you decide at the last minute that you want to go, you can open up the app. You can see pictures of the views from your actual seats, and you can know exactly what you're paying for with no surprise fees, as long as you toggle that option on in the app. It just makes it really easy to go through and do. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. While we don't want to get in the weeds of the playoff situation, let's get in the weeds a little bit of offensive play calling, because a lot of fans are asking why certain players and concepts aren't being used more. And we've already gotten a little bit into Kliff Kingsbury's offensive approach. And I don't mean to sit here and try to make it sound like I know more about running offense than Kliff Kingsbury does. This is just what I see from where I'm sitting, guys. Just take it for what it's worth and all those things. But insiders Michael and Scott come through and they say, why is the receiving production from the tight end so low? Why doesn't the team run outside more? And why isn't Luke McCaffrey playing as the X receiver? So insider Michael on the anemic tight end production. Michael came through. So the team's tight ends are 30th in targets, 26 in total yards. I didn't check those stats, but I don't really need to, whether they're specifically accurate or not. Bottom line is, we all know this. The tight ends outside of Zach Ertz specifically, not really involved as receivers. And even Zach Ertz, from a game-to-game perspective, might be shut out. Certainly he was impactful against the Chicago Bears, but that's not always the case. So it's almost always a situation of scheme, right? John Bates, the best blocking tight end in the National Football League. I think he's an underrated receiver, but he's certainly still most effective as a pass blocker. Ben Sinnott, I mean, we knew this from the moment he was drafted. Really good at blocking, not the greatest receiving tight end in the world. It's where he's got to grow the most. Now, we don't get to see full practices during the season. I did feel like he was probably a little bit better than we left 2024 when we came into 2025. But again, when you have Zach Ertz out there as a weapon, when you've got a guy like Deebo Samuel in the short area, when you got Luke McCaffrey who can do stuff like that, when you've got running backs like Jeremy McNichols, Ja'Cory Cross-Kemera that can be impactful in the passing game, I mean, there's just not a lot of call and need for the third tight ends to be a very valuable receiver, to be quite honest with you. So using him as a blocker is just kind of a schematic thing, things like that. They're just not going to be primary targets in the system. In fact, Zach Ertz really isn't a primary target in the system either. Usually he's a target of opportunity more than anything else. I think Jaden has kind of made him a primary target in a lot of ways, but the scheme itself doesn't necessarily highlight tight ends. So I think that's a big reason for it. Insider Scott, he came through asking about the outside runs, and I think because they believe the strength of their offensive line is inside, not necessarily that saying, Chris Paul and Andrew Wiley are better than Laramie Tunsil on the outside, things like that, but just, you put those three guys together, Tyler Biadasz and those two guards, you got like 900 pounds of just big dude that you want to try to push the line forward. The guard's been shuffled. We'll see what happens when Sam Cosmi comes back. Sam is a little bit more athletic once he's healthy, if he's healthy. Then some of these guys, like, do you want Andrew Wiley pulling all that much and things like that as well? So we'll see. But this scheme overall from Kliff Kingsbury is mostly built on an inside zone concept that lets the guards and centers try to push downhill, which again, just another reason I think Chris Rodriguez should be getting a little bit more burn. Put him in the middle of that pile. Chris Rodriguez Jr. has one fumble to his career record and over 100 carries over the course of his career. Very good securing the ball. I say that and watch he's going to have a fumble this weekend, but knock on wood, that doesn't happen. Consistently winning on the edge. It just requires a different type of blocking. I like the Trent Scott stuff that they've been doing. I certainly wouldn't mind seeing them try it. I'm just trying to tell you why I think it's not happening. Not that I don't agree with you that it should happen more, if that makes sense. So would certainly love to see them try more, but I just think that's why it's not happening. As for Luke McCaffrey on the X, we actually have seen Luke McCaffrey play the X. Not a lot, certainly. And you're not going to see it a lot. I know that he has the height. He's got the speed from a, on paper standpoint, but his greatest strengths are his quickness and his route running. And you don't want that jammed up by a press man corner. So you keep him off the line of scrimmage. You guarantee that he's got space to work and operate. And honestly, he's been doing really well about it. I think he's got an A- for me for the season so far. Had an A come out of this game. I mean, he's certainly someone who's been stepping up with his opportunities with Noah Brown and Terry McLaurin being out. So truthfully, it's kind of one of those don't fix it if it ain't broke type of situations. I'm not really worried about, can Luke McCaffrey be even better if you put him somewhere else? Because there's just nobody that you're going to replace. If there was another Luke McCaffrey to put in his spot, let's see if Luke McCaffrey, the X receiver, is good enough to be there while this other Luke McCaffrey plays his position. You have Jalen Lane who can play in the slot as well, but they're not the same type of receivers. You're not asking them to do the same type of things, all those kinds of things. So I think he's effective where he is. Let the development kind of come as it goes. Still very good questions. And all things to look for as we move forward. Of course, that's going to do it for this week's Mailbag episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we are going to be coming to our crossover Thursday. Man, this Monday game just threw me off my schedule all week long. So Marcus Mosier of Locked On Cowboys and I will be talking about this weekend's Cowboys-Commanders matchup. For me, it is a must win for the Washington Commanders. I'm just putting that out there right now. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you can text them to me directly. Become a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. For your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler Rowland in the morning, Tony Wiggins in the afternoon. I am with Tony every Wednesday afternoon. So you can find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to this podcast. To the everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you every single day. And I thank you yet again for coming through today. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll see you again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.